So if they found the Bible or they found the Quran, you were dead. What the terrorists couldn't do on 9/11, which was break New York, the politicians did in the last 7 years. They did more damage than if you would have unleashed 1 million bombs in New York City. We are in the middle of the Great Awakening. This is bigger than just Epstein. Epstein's just the tip of the iceberg of the world.
Howdy. We're here for another beautiful episode of Cogdell Law Uncensored. With me always, producer Tommy in the back.
Tommy in the back.
And of course, Dan the man.
Not in the back.
And we have a special guest, something we're super excited for, Bek Lover. Bek, how's it going, man?
I'm happy to be here, man. I met Dan briefly about 2 months ago, Dan, I think, maybe even 3. Pleasure to be back in the great free state of Texas, the state that I was born in. I don't sound like a cowboy, but you know,
you got a cowboy's heart, Bek.
The first 5 years of my life were spent here, and towards the Houston area, and Dallas is, not Dallas, Texas itself is always a place that's been special to me. What it stands for, how Texans act, how they, carry their way of life down here. Although it took me like 20 years to figure out, every time someone was saying "bless your heart," they were cursing me out. I thought like,
that's
wow,
the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah, I didn't know that people were like, they're saying that because they think you're. I mean, are we allowed to?
Yeah, everything.
Curse on here?
Yeah, of course.
I didn't realize that they were saying that to basically tell me I'm an asshole.
Right.
So, but at least they do it politely, right? Because the stuff that comes out of people's mouths in New York is filthy.
It's kind of like, with all due respect, from.
Exactly. It's like,
It's an honor to have you. Thank you for coming on. Seriously.
I know that these last 10 years have been very crucial to Texas, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of things today. Texas, life, what's going on, and with, what you've been working on to defend the community in Plano, what's going on in America, what's going on in the world, and kind of how, our paths collided in a good way. So, it's really important, and especially because I'm all over the place, right? California, here, there. I'm now going to be calling Texas my home. I'm not going to say exactly where, but within the next week, I will have a home here.
Oh, nice. That's exciting.
Now, I have a right to come back.
Yeah?
Because on my passport, it says Texas.
There you go.
Now, all you Northerners,
stay where you are.
All you Californians, and I've been running into you into the streets and the restaurants, and if you didn't like the way things were where you were home, when you come down to Dallas, when you come down to Texas, you come down here proper. You keep your mouth shut, you put your head down, you work, and you vote the way to keep this place going. I've had enough of the ideology. This game of left and right to me is a complete joke. I understand what it's supposed to mean by being right, like a conservative and a liberal. And I lean to the right like a mother effer, right? As far as the Constitution, the First Amendment, religious freedom, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, which Texas is by far the best state in the country for that, in my opinion. And it's a very important right. I'm a first-generation American. I was born here because my family had to escape communist Albania.
Yeah.
That was the most isolated communist country, worse than North Korea. North Korea is basically the equivalent of it.
Okay.
But even worse, because you would never have Dennis Rodman dribbling basketball with the dictator, who was Enver Hoxha at the time. So literally no one was allowed in and no one was allowed out. So I'm the son of refugees who came here to pursue the American dream that is quickly disappearing even for just regular Americans.
No question.
My family fought against the communist regime. It was the only atheist country in the whole world at the time. So if they found the Bible or they found the Quran, you were dead. So for 40, 50 years, there was no faith allowed in that nation.
Wow.
And it has a very tragic history. Albania is a very pro-American country. Probably, I would say, the most pro-American country literally on the face of the planet, and most people know nothing about it.
No kidding.
And we have a very tragic history, a very ancient history. We are literally, they've been doing DNA tests now. There's always rivalry in the Balkans. The Balkans has always been a hot spot.
Right. It's
been the crossroads of the empires since Alexander the Great. So our people are direct descendants of the ancient Pelagicians and the ancient Illyrians. The Greeks were to our south, and we share some DNA, but they just, we were closed off to the world. For 2,000 years, we were under the Romans. We had our province. It was called Illyricum. I never realized the impact that the Albanian nation, our ancestors, had on the Roman Empire, which was amazing to me. To my understanding, like a lot of the Caesars were Albanian, the most elite soldiers.
Really?
This is stuff that I never really knew. They don't teach any of this in school.
Of course, yeah.
If you want to learn real history, you got to go deep. And then there's suppressed history. And then there's history that's only written by the winner, which, let's be real, even in our own history here in the U.S., very whitewashed, very watered down when we study, what really happened and how things happened. So, just coming from that lineage, which really we're a warrior nation. We've been fighting for our existence for thousands of years. And I feel there's a lot of similarities to like what it means to be a Texan, to be strong, to love freedom, to, stand up for what you believe in. And I think this is one of the last strongholds in the entire country. To me, this is the only place left that still feels like America.
Right.
You think I will never sit there and say New York City, like I hate bashing it, but that's all I've been doing for the last, since right before the lockdowns. What I call was the declaration of war on humanity and America as a whole for our freedoms. And to see that city that was brought back to life by Giuliani, which was brought back to life by right policies, right? Growing up as a child in New York, one of the insults we used to have was, if you didn't like someone, you say, your mother works on 42nd Street, okay? And if you say that to the younger generation that lives in New York, they have no idea what you might know it, because I'm sure you traveled up there back in the day. But that's how filthy Times Square was.
Right, sure.
Okay, it was a land where women sold themselves openly in the street, firearms, drugs. It was a very dangerous world before Giuliani came in and brought in the right policies and, led from a conservative point of view. And I mean, the guy literally took down the mafia, right? And I'm sure you respect it in one shape or form as an attorney and being in law, and that's kind of where he came from. This is a man that he literally was Batman. He literally saved New York City. So to see it go through all that and get to a place where it became the epicenter of Earth, and it no longer is.
Yeah.
I no longer feel like, I've said this many times, what the alleged terrorists, because I'm starting to doubt that story myself, what the terrorists couldn't do on 9/11, whichever terrorist it was, whichever group perpetrated that, whether it's the official story or not, I think there's a lot of holes in that. But what they couldn't do on 9/11, which was break New York, the politicians did in the last 7 years. They did more damage than if you would have unleashed 1 million bombs in New York City. It's disgusting what's happened.
It's true.
And it was all because we allowed our constitutional rights to be taken away from us. We sat back while they allowed big corporations to stay in business, and everyone got shut down. It was like a retail apocalypse on speed. And overnight, I watched my city turn into a ghost town. Everyone left. A lot of them came down here and washed up on your shores and in Florida, and instead of staying back and fighting for their city. And I did. I never went into podcasting. I know a lot of people have seen my content. I've been on some of the biggest podcasts on earth. I know a lot of people that know my story. I never went into this, brother Dan, to talk about religion or to talk about politics. I started my podcast to be like a motivational podcast, to interview people from all over the world who have been through our worst nightmares, as human beings, to inspire people to get back up. That no matter what you've been through, no matter how hopeless life can seem in the moment, it doesn't have to stay like that.
Right.
And I understood through all the tragedies I've been through in my life, why people might give up or take their own life. So that was really my motivating force for getting into podcasting. But once they declared war, so I started my first season of The Comeback Team, that was the name of that podcast, with Carlo from The Sopranos. Okay, Arthur Nascarella, he's been in a lot of great films. Arthur, if you're watching, I love you. I probably would not be here today if it wasn't for his support. The shutdown helped in that aspect, because he would have never came on my show.
Sure.
Because he's a big actor. He's been on Billions and all these big shows. But they ended up shutting down Hollywood. He's like, I got nothing better to do. He's like, I'll come on one episode. And then we just hit it off. We were cigar smokers, and one thing led to another. He did the first season with me. But then when they closed down, we were doing it remotely. So I got really angry, and I'm like, I'm not going to let this stop me. So I started speaking out about what was happening in New York, what was happening in the country, advising people, even though I'm not a doctor, they shouldn't be putting certain things into their body without doing their homework, which I think it's to me what's boggling my mind, Dan. and I want to hear from you too, is we're seeing it out in the open. Everything that was called a conspiracy, everything that they, said people like me were crazy for fighting for and you're delusional. There's like maybe 3 or 4 conspiracies left, I think, at this point that haven't come true. One of them is, I want the people of Texas, the great state of Texas, and across the world, whoever's watching this episode, please pay attention to your skies. Please, every day when you wake up, I want you to spend a half an hour looking at your sky, and you're going to see these lines. And I don't know if you believe in that, but it's real, Ken. Dan, I'm sorry. It's real. I won't use the word because it'll pop up a warning because we don't live in a free country anymore. You as a lawyer, I would really love if you guys all, because what you're doing is you're protecting these things. You're protecting people's rights. It's important what you do, brother.
So back up. What do we look for in the sky? Help me with that.
There's a great documentary that came out. It's very boring to watch, but it is so critical. It's on Amazon. Okay. It's called Climate Trails.
Climate Trails. Okay.
And states like Tennessee have passed laws where airplanes are not allowed to spray from the back of their planes. If you pay attention, you're going to notice that the clouds you remember from 30 years ago are not the same clouds you're seeing today.
Right.
You'll see the lines start zigzagging, and you can even follow the flight patterns. Literally can follow this just from tracking planes. They'll start in the morning, and they'll go back and forth, back at the same plane. It'll literally look like a million X's in a row. And you'll see the line, and it stays there. It doesn't just disappear like a normal contrail. And they try to say, oh, you're just stupid, different altitudes. Millions of videos of planes at the same altitude. One doesn't have it, one has it. Same altitudes, from in the air and from below. When these certain lines come from the back of the planes, these certain streams, which are, in my opinion, and the opinions of many experts and whistleblowers who have worked for the government and many other places, they're playing God with the sky. They're spraying something that they've convinced pilots to believe is to prevent global warming, not taking into consideration the impact it has on humanity and on the soil. And they, in this documentary, Climate Trails, they'll show you, we've been measuring the aluminum, the this, the that. I think there's definitely a correlation between this, dementia, autism. I think it's a lot deeper than we think. I know a lot of people think it's from shots, but these people that have been awake, I call them, they've been awake for a long time, and there's levels to being awake with what's been going on in the world. We are in the middle of the Great Awakening. This is bigger than just Epstein. Epstein's just the tip of the iceberg of the world I believe we live in. A world that's been corrupted, a world where we can sit here and try to identify these people by race and religion, but it's much deeper than that. Right. As someone that comes from the Muslim faith, I can sit here and tell you that there's terrorists that call themselves Muslims.
Sure.
You as a Christian know that there's people that have used the name of Christ and done the most unthinkable things. You just had one of your super pastors down here arrested for
right.
molesting
Well,
children.
there was that whole Crusades thing, so let's not forget our history.
Yeah, but my work has been to build that gap between the Christians and the Muslims, specifically, because they've been pinned against each other. But we'll cover that a little bit later. Getting back to these trails, because I think it's very important. You're going to see it, Dan. I'm begging you as a friend, as a fellow Texan, as a fellow human, pay attention to the sky.
I'll check it out.
Now, what you'll learn very quickly there is that these are being sold as a way to prevent global warming. It's basically dimming the sun. I first started noticing this about 20 years ago, but I thought it was something weird in my brain because I have one of them brains, I have an imagination. I think, why does the sunlight color seem off? It would be like if I put a little bit of shade or film over this light right here. It would be different. That's what it's called. It's like they're dimming the sunlight. So I believe there's something in that gives us, we need certain things from the sun as human beings. They're playing God with it. So it manipulates the weather. Also what it does is basically, it's not, so Tennessee passed a law against this, right? Why would Tennessee pass a law about planes being able to do this if it's not real? They can pass all the laws they want, but it's federal airspace. Right. So the streams continue from the backs of these planes. What they're realizing is that, it's basically NGOs. They show you the companies in that documentary. Pilots have come forward. She even cornered one of them, but he wouldn't give his identity. She waited for him in the airport. Like, this is happening. It's real. I mean, I got over 50 million views in the last month just showing real videos that are on my Instagram. You could even maybe pop one in, post edit. But can you pull up my Instagram?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, this is a real video. I'm going to show you a couple, and you tell me, Dan, how this is normal. So the line will start solid. It'll be there for a while, and then it slowly aerosols over the sky. You can look at your forecast. You'll see the day is not a cloud in the sky in the forecast, yet all of a sudden it's hazy. Why is it hazy? It's like a haze. It's not a cloud. And so if I have plenty of them. So go, you make it bigger. So if you go right down, there's a couple of them. I have one in LA. So scroll down. So there's one right there. So, okay, look at that one right down there. Right down. Yeah, look, this is me. I filmed this in LA 2 weeks ago. This is me filming it. That's how the lines start. Then they aerosol like that.